From its inception, Alcatraz has been more than just a prison island surrounded by concrete walls and a pool of chilly water. Razor wire, fog, and tails have encircled the puzzle. The question that has been asked by all who have gazed upon that rugged rock in San Francisco Bay for many years is this: did they succeed? Now, in the year 2025, a fresh perspective has emerged that completely flips the script on previous notions. The story will not end happily, though. This has nothing to do with good guys and bad guys. The story revolves around enchantment, darkness, and an eerie, secretive night. Beyond those confines of the cells, what actually transpired? To what extent have we come close to knowing until now? The Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary, commonly referred to as the Rock, was the most secure prison in the United States. A severe approach to imprisonment taken by the government. It sits atop a little island. The island of Alcatraz lies 25 miles from San Francisco's shore. It served as a military stronghold until its conversion to a prison in 1934. Construction began in the 21s, 850. The Federal Bureau of Prisons operates the facility, which was constructed to house inmates deemed too disruptive or dangerous for other prisons. We always intended Alcatraz to be the end of the line, a minimum privilege, maximum security prison for the most heinous offenders who would never change. In and of itself, the prison complex was an engineering and security marvel. Constructed between 1910 and 1912, the main cell house housed 4 blocks of cells, a dining hall, a library, a hospital, and prison administration offices. Miniature and devoid of any furniture, the rooms were fashioned from tool, inaccessible steel bars. There were fewer guards per inmate than any other facility in the nation, and prisoners were counted as many as 13 times daily. Metal detectors, tear gas canisters, and armed guards stationed in elevated gun galleries improved security in every way. Work, visits, and even talking at meal times were privileges that you had to earn. Life became extremely regimented and taxing on the mind as a result. Alcatraz was rarely crowded to its maximum capacity of 312 inmates. Al Capone and Machine Gun Kelly were among the most notorious criminals who stayed there. D-block houses the Hole, a cluster of isolation cells notorious for their appalling conditions. And it is here that super maximum criminals were sent. The objective wasn't recovery, but control. And the whole thing was racially motivated. There have been numerous upgrades to the prison throughout its 29 years of operation. One example is the prison, which underwent safety upgrades in the 1930s and 1940s, with the installation of electric walls and new locking systems. The prison was closed on March 21, 1963, primarily due to the high maintenance costs and the deteriorating state of the buildings caused by ocean rust. People are interested in this heritage because of it. Over 1 million visitors visit annually, now that it is a museum operated by the National Park Service. Once considered the harshest prison in the United States, this renovated facility now gives visitors a taste of life behind bars, where the boundary between punishment and survival was frequently blurry. Its walls were powerful, but one fateful night, the story behind them became even more so. The inevitable rock myth. Alcatraz was more than a prison, it represented a cause. Because of its location on a windswept island in San Francisco Bay, it came to be known as the Alcatraz Island Correctional Complex. After being rejected elsewhere, individuals were sent there by the system to accomplish more than simply serve their sentence. It was said that an escape was not only impossible, but unthinkable, due to the design of the prison, its seclusion, and its stringent regulations. That perspective was supported by evidence rather than hearsay. It had remained open for 29 years without a single case of someone fleeing. Although some of the 14 individuals who attempted to flee ended up drowning, the majority were either captured or killed. The bay served as an impregnable last line of defense due to the perilous waves, frigid weather, and extreme distance from the coast. The general public viewed any attempt at fleeing as tantamount to committing suicide. Alcatraz placed a high value on this enclosed photograph. They did more than just lock people up. They also removed any means of escape. The legend that the rock was notoriously hard to escape gave the prison its power. Officials, guards, and the general populace all bought into it. It was in June 1962 that power was challenged between 10:30 and 11:00 p.m. On June 11, 1962, Frank Morris, John Anglin, and Clarence Anglin were supposed to disappear after escaping their rooms. I reflected on who I am as a result of the escape. The moment word got out that Alcatraz had been apprehended, it was lowered from its perch. The mental effects were immediate. A mental fortress had been replaced by utter chaos. However, unlike previous instances, the enigma persisted this time. As a result of the ambiguity surrounding the story's resolution, curiosity was piqued, leading to a plot that extended beyond the confines of the prison. The 1962 escape remains an integral aspect of Alcatraz's history, transcending its status as a mere event. Whether or not those men lived is still a mystery. What is known is that America was finally able to let go of a myth she had held onto for decades when they weren't around. Word of the legend spread via the fissure in the rock. Frank Lee Morris, the mastermind behind the scheme, was not your typical inmate. A skilled thief with a cunning mind, he had evaded capture on multiple occasions. Alcatraz was built to house individuals like him. Morris spent much of his childhood in transit. At the age of 11, he lost his parents and was found guilty of a crime at the age of 13. His erratic upbringing hardened him, but it also sharpened his instincts. In January 1960, Morris was transferred to Alcatraz following his escape from the Louisiana State Penitentiary. His criminal history includes multiple successful attempts at elude capture, drug possession, and armed robbery. As soon as he arrived, he started planning his escape. Morris was grouped with inmates John and Clarence Anglin, along with Allen West, upon his arrival at Alcatraz. From his time spent in other prisons, he was familiar with all of these inmates. Due to the close proximity of their rooms, the men were able to converse with one another during the night. Because of this, they were able to secretly put together one of the most cunning escape teams ever. The role of boss was immediately assumed by Morris. His brilliant mind and history of escaping from prison allowed him to devise a scheme to discredit Alcatraz. Morris was determined to succeed where others had failed. After months of repairing the concrete damage under their sink vents, the group finally succeeded. They pried apart the crumbling concrete with metal spoons and discarded saw blades. Additionally, they constructed the drill by utilizing a vacuum cleaner as its power source. To conceal their activities, Morris constructed papier-mâché grills and decorated them with items he pilfered from the library and repair shop. Among these are the noises produced when they bore holes. During Morris's music hour, the moaning sound of his accordion drowned out the digging noise. This demonstrates Morris's mastery of strategy. There is no room for improvisation. Not only did they manage to escape, but their success directly challenged the notion that Alcatraz could not be breached. In defiance of all odds, Morris and the Anglin brothers sewed 50 raincoats into a 6 by 4 foot raft and life vests. Using hot steam lines, they sealed the massive piece of rubber. They went so far as to construct an accordion-based air pump. Although it was officially stated that they drowned, no remains were discovered, and a letter dated 2013 provides substantial evidence to the contrary. Whether Morris actually died in the bay or led a clandestine life in hiding, his escape from Alcatraz was, without a question, the most cunning in the prison's 30-year history. That not even the Rock was impenetrable was demonstrated by it. The Anglin brothers, John and Clarence, were more than just two inmates. They were bound together in their shared anguish, devotion, and will to escape. They hail from a modest farming family in the heart of rural Florida. As children, the 13 of them figured out how to get by without anyone else's help. In order to escape the now famous Alcatraz, they relied on their brotherly bond. They were sent to the Atlanta penitentiary due to their criminal lives, which primarily involved robbing banks. They were transferred to Alcatraz, the last destination for troublemakers, after their repeated attempts at escaperation caused so much trouble for the jail staff. It was at Alcatraz that Frank Morris and the Anglins reconnected. Both of them had met previously while incarcerated. The brothers were assigned adjacent cells next to Allen West and Morris, allowing them to collaborate and communicate discreetly. Morris oversaw the rescue plan, which relied heavily on the Anglin brothers. For months, they dug holes through the crumbling concrete using metal spoons and saw blades. The Anglins oversaw logistics and covert operations, while Morris oversaw engineering. In order to conceal the holes, they utilized materials obtained from their jail work assignments to create papier-mâché vent covers. Furthermore, that essentially aided them in gathering the necessary equipment for their departure. Moreover, they assisted Morris in constructing life jackets and a massive raft measuring 6 by 14 feet from 50 previously used raincoats. A modified concertina was utilized to inflate the raft and transform it into an air pump after sealing the rubber with prison hot steam lines. It's also helpful to be aware of the day-to-day operations of the prison and the resources accessible through the production line, but they meticulously plotted their every action, and another well-built fancy had no idea where they were going. For instance, they were instrumental in crafting the renowned dummy heads from a combination of soap, toilet paper, and actual hair collected from the barbershop floor. Their disappearance and the events that followed are among the most mysterious crimes in U.S. history. Even though a court declared the two brothers dead in 1979, new evidence implies they might have lived on. The brothers' Christmas cards, a photo from 1975 that appeared to depict them in Brazil, and a letter from 2013 claiming they had been hiding were all confiscated. The shocking and unusually quiet event was discussed by family members and jail staff in a BBC interview. Neither sounds nor alarms went off during the night. It was more than just a physical escape if the Anglins were able to make it out alive. They managed a mental escape as well, vanishing from both history and an impassable prison. The 1962 Alcatraz escape required more than simply digging and raft construction. It also required mastery of the image. Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers were able to evade capture in large part due to their skill in creating lifelike prosthetic heads. These imposters fooled the guards who were conducting daily head counts because they looked real. Crafted with meticulous attention to detail, the heads resembled slumbering inmates. A peculiar combination of soap, toothpaste, and toilet paper was used to make them. They adorned them with real human hair they plucked off the floor of a barber shop and painted them in flesh tones using art supplies stolen from the prison's repair shop. Besides being very intelligent, these brains were also very analytical. During nightly checks, guards would simply peer into cells to detect motion, rather than physically rousing inmates. After being placed on the pillows and partially concealed under the blankets, the dummies gave the impression that they were dozing off. The fugitives staged their ruse by making it appear as though they were sleeping by rolling up blankets and clothing under the sheets. It was too late for the guards to do anything about the three individuals' disappearance on June 12 when they heard the morning roll call. They had been gone for hours. In addition to the fake heads, the trickery included caves that extended the entire length of the walls. Inmates used papier-mâché and cardboard to cover holes that had been dug for months, with covers made from ripped magazine pages from the prison library. They accomplished this while covering up the holes. The imitations resembled the grills that vent air from their cells. The open escape route is concealed behind these faux grills, which blend in nicely with the wall. The guards could only make out what appeared to be a typical blocked vent when they peered into the cells. The path to liberty, though, was a tube concealed behind it. An even more intriguing aspect of the illusion is its connection to the larger practice of psychological warfare in prison, specifically the art of lying that men in dire circumstances learn. People have gotten out of jail on a global scale by telling fibs, such as hiding letters in old books or creating elaborate costumes out of discarded laundry. But when it comes to meticulous planning and execution, no trick will ever top the Alcatraz trick. Working on the case was FBI agent Michael Dyke, who stated they didn't just dig out, they practiced a performance. This meant that the escape was more than just a physical act. The fugitives staged a ruse that fooled the entire prison system, including the guards. During the course of that evening, their cells were transformed into a stage, and they had the opportunity to play the role of the specter for a short period of time. Yet, deceit was merely the beginning. The true getaway began beneath the surface. Steps to evade Alcatraz, the primary strategy for evading capture, was actually engraved into the crumbling prison walls. The concrete behind the air vents in the sinks was severely damaged by salt, which was exploited by Frank Morris, John and Clarence Anglin, and Alan West. The workers painstakingly chipped away at the flimsy material using basic yet ingenious implements over the period of several months. They pilfered metal spoons from the dining hall and repurposed old saw blades. The fact that they repurposed the motor from a vacuum cleaner to create a drill was even more impressive. They constructed escape routes, one tiny tunnel at a time, night after night, until they reached a maintenance passageway that was empty. A great deal of precision and care was required for this, as brute force would not have been sufficient. During the day, they covered the holes with cardboard and papier-mâché air grills, being extremely careful not to be seen. The inmates painted these grills to match the wall, using art supplies found in the prison library. Because of this, they blended in beautifully with their environment. The fugitives timed their digging operation to coincide with music hour, a designated period each day for the playing of musical instruments. Morris transformed the cell block into a clandestine building site by playing an ear-piercing accordion, which muted the sounds of machinery. On reaching a size where they could crawl through, the inmates escaped. They forded the unguarded corridor and made their way to the upper floor of the prison, where they erected a clandestine workshop. Here they stored their belongings while they prepared other components of their escape plan, such as the raft and paddles. The crumbling prison sits atop the foundations of ancient military strongholds, making it an easy target for intruders. Reporters and former inmates alike would later claim that Alcatraz's foundations were rotting and breaking up, allowing the few men who were allowed to work in the cramped repair tunnels without interference. Reaching the air shaft located atop the building was a crucial last task. The men climbed 30 feet and pried open the vent cover using plumbing lines. To avoid detection, they sealed the grate and constructed a soap bolt to resemble a real one. Again, there is insufficient data. From their cells to the rooftop, the inmates had a long way to travel before they could launch their attack. There was a lot more to their plan than simply escaping. They were taking advantage of the prison's age and design, two shortcomings that are frequently disregarded to their advantage. After they accomplished that, they accomplished something no one had before. They discovered an almost surgically tight and unfindable way out of the rock. Rainy Day Raft, and the Chile Bay. Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers still faced the harsh, frigid waters of San Francisco Bay, despite completing their escape tunnel and figuring out how to reach the upper floors of the prison. Strong currents were known to exist, and the water temperature was 50 to 55 degrees Fahrenheit. These factors contributed to Alcatraz's long-standing reputation as a inescapable prison. Morris and the Anglins weren't merely escaping from a prison cell, they were evading an island stronghold. They accomplished this by constructing a raft and life vests out of over 50 stolen raincoats. This demonstrated their doggedness and was a perfect example of jail engineering. The escaped inmates constructed the raft, which measured approximately 6 by 14 feet, in a makeshift workshop they had established above the cell block. The raincoats were stitched together using thread sourced from the prison's work areas, and steam lines from the water system were used to melt rubber and seal the seams. They inflated the raft using a concertina, a miniature accordion that they had modified into a makeshift air pump. They even fashioned the paddles by hand using scraps of board that they likely discovered on the job. Finding the resources necessary to conquer the bay was a breeze. Months of meticulous preparation culminated on the evening of June 11, 1962, when the trio finally reached the island's northeastern shore. Because they were so ecstatic about the possibility of reaching Angel Island, less than 2 miles away, they detonated the raft and cast it into the night. Even though it remained stealthy until the following morning, the escape was gradually leaking details about its intended destination. A paddle was discovered by the Coast Guard on June 14th,